Okay, thank you, everyone.
My pleasure. Okay, so hi everyone and welcome to today. And really felt to start the new year with, like I said, it's interesting, but there's only 10 people here at the moment, which I had a bit of a chuckle at. And I thought, you say something exciting, people love to come. And as soon as you say something a bit more challenging, it's less attractive to come. And so I had a bit of a chuckle about that one, because we all, myself definitely included, don't particularly like often facing things about dark nights, dark shadows, challenging times, and pain. So it's something that it's in our human DNA to go at all costs to avoid pain and suffering of any kind whatsoever. And I can certainly put my hand up on that one. So I thought it's a good one to start the new year. At our intercession, we did get some pretty clear downloads about what's ahead for the planet and what we're moving into. And let's just say I see a challenging year ahead, and people who think 2020 was challenging are going to find out that, yes, it's very possible to get more challenging yet again. And this is what I see ahead. I see levels of challenges increasing, because as you'll learn today, the purpose of any kind of suffering or pain is to actually wake us up, and it's to bring about enlightenment or spiritual awakening. And all we're seeing now is this happening on a global level. So it's a wonderful thing to talk about a coming awakening, a great ascension into fifth dimension, a wonderful new earth, a golden age. But the process to get there isn't necessarily quite as exciting when we start talking about that. And it's a little bit like everyone can watch the Olympic athletes who run and win that gold medal, and they celebrate, or that incredible basketball team that win a championship ring. And that gymnast who, like Nadia Comaneci in the 70s, getting that perfect 10. But you don't hear and see the incredible pain, the incredible challenges, the incredible hardship that often goes into that, for those people paying a very severe price and doing what's needed to do. And that's the very reason why most of us aren't out there winning gold medals in Olympics or going out there winning amazing prizes and amazing awards. Because once we find out what's involved to get there, it very quickly becomes a whole lot less attractive. So it's good to talk about this today and what this means, because as we learn to embrace this and embrace darkness, shadows, pain, and dealing with this stuff as just a part of the reality of choosing to incarnate into planet Earth in a life of service as an indigo and in a life of service of humanity, there's the both sides that we have to learn to overcome and challenge and eventually transcend, both positive and negative, to move into what's called true suchness or true oneness. So who would like to start with the Lord's Prayer? So it'd be great if someone can read this today.
I'll read it, Warren.
Great.
The prayer to our Father. O thou from whom the breath of life comes, who fills all realms of sound, light, and vibration, may your light be experienced in my utmost holiest. Your heavenly domain approaches. Let your will come true in the universe, all that vibrates, just as on earth that is material and dense. Give us wisdom, understanding, assistance for our daily need. Detach the fetters of faults that bind us. Karma, like we let go the guilt of others. Let us not be lost in superficial things, materialism, common temptations, but let us be freed from that what keeps us off from our true purpose. From you comes the all-working will, the lively strength to act, the song that beautifies all and renews itself from age to age. Amen. Sealed in trust, faith, and truth, I confirm with my entire being.
Thank you, Grace. Okay, so Always great to start with that vibration and to just notice those prayers. Notice the inward call. Notice the detaching the fetters of fault that bind us and keep us connected to samsara, the cycle of rebirth and death. So where we keep coming back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And the reason that we're here on planet Earth, and the reason that we're here, and the reason that we're here on this planet right now, is because we've chosen to be here, but also because we haven't yet mastered that which we're here to master. And until we do, we're going to keep coming back. So today's word or card, which I got, was this. So fighting. And this card is basically getting caught up in that illusion of fighting or war. Now, in saying that, yes, we are in a spiritual war, but often our fighting starts to become a human struggle, what I call a lower nature struggle. Just it's like another form of duality expressing itself against its opposite. Another way of looking at it is like being in the triangle rather than being outside the triangle. And many of you know, because you've worked with Grace and that, about the triangle. Is there anyone here who doesn't know what I mean when I'm talking about the triangle? Just so I'm clear. So anyone who doesn't actually know about it. Or is everyone pretty familiar with the triangle? Okay, good. So I don't really need to go into that heavily then by the looks of it. So it looks like most of you are pretty familiar with that. So all I'll just quickly say on the triangle, just as a quick cover, is that when you go into that and what that exactly means, is you get the persecutor, rescuer, and the victim. And if you choose to play any of those roles, you're getting into fighting. Whether you're fighting to be rescued, whether you're fighting against your persecutor, or you're the persecutor fighting to dominate something that you see as overpowering you. So the whole purpose of basically any kind of therapy work is to move you out of the triangle to become the neutral observer. So really that's a large part of what that card is talking about. And it's going to be an essential skill for this new year. And as we're moving into the dark night of the soul of planet Earth. I've done a lot of talking about that in the past, but today we're going to really just go into this a little bit more about the cosmic night, what suffering means, and what's happening as we're going through this thing. Okay, so on that note, this is the promise that we've got. Even though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we will fear no evil, basically, for your rod and staff comfort me. So this is Psalm 23. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Well, I've just left some words out, I just realized. Quite funny, I just wrote it. So I fixed that up. I fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. In other words, we don't have any fear. And there's a very good book written by Hannah Hurnard called Hind's Feet in the High Places, which is based on the hero's journey model, and where you can actually see how she walks through, and at one part she enters a very dark valley where she can hardly see. And when she's in the valley, what she's told is, as you hold on to the shepherd's hand and just stay really focused on your path and don't look to the right and the left, you'll be fine. And she found that as soon as she stopped fighting in the valley and being afraid and trying to resist it, she noticed that straight away it became easier. And not only became easier, but she was amazed at her strength and how she built up so much strength in her body. So we've talked about all this before and how this keeps us attached to this earth. Ultimately, dark nights of the soul, if I had to summarize the whole message today with this, it's just very simply, it's a way of helping us fast track breaking free of karmic bondage and the chains that are enslaving us from our various past lives, and the various things going on to this planet and to the cycle that mean we have to keep coming back until we've finished it. One thing about karmic law is it is very exact. You have to complete it, you have to release it, and you have to finish it. You cannot enter a realm, a higher realm of nirvana or realm of stillness where all beings are in stillness if you yourself are not in stillness. It's a little bit like if you're seeking a relationship or a soulmate or a life partner, and you're saying, I really want a soulmate and life partner who gives me my freedom and sends love my way, and basically where we have a interdependence. Well, if you keep not attracting that, it just simply means that you haven't yet really changed that within yourself. So you're continuing to attract and create the very thing that you don't want in your life. So generally, as you know, if you've hit a point of stillness or a good place in your life, the last thing you really want is someone in a terrible place to come into your life and disrupt you. So how much more do the light beings and the councils wish to keep their realms pure and make sure that beings and sentient beings and entities that have not released their karma are not allowed in? So hence, therefore, it's not a case of anything other of keeping out. It's more just a case of not letting someone in who's going to taint a realm and change the whole frequency of the realm. So this is why it's so important for us to become released from this, because otherwise we will stay within these realms and we will stay within what we're in. So it's really profound realizations. You start to realize that, start to go, yeah, so Grace goes, wow, I got that. Yeah, it's quite a profound, isn't it, Grace? If we haven't shifted and changed, we're not going to be let in. It's that simple. I mean, why would you? Like, let's say we're in a higher realm of peace in a sanctuary, living in a state region of sanctuary in a small little community. Would we want people coming into our community who have a different way of thinking to us, who don't value the environment, who don't value our land, who don't value our people's rights? No, we don't. So that's why it's so important to change our consciousness and shift our own consciousness in any way, shape, and form. So this is really another message to really help you fast track the path of breaking the chains of karmic bondage today and moving beyond this. So we've talked about these different layers of attack, which is really just another way of beings, dark beings in wars of light and darkness, doing everything they possibly can to fight against you and prevent you from leaving these realms and keep you here and maintain their dominion. It says in Revelation that the dark feminine, the mother, says, I will suffer the loss of no children. We've all met people who are jealous, and how often when someone's jealous, it's not even about them prospering. They just want to make sure that you don't. So really, these beings they don't want you to ascend. They wish to keep control. They wish to avert judgment and avoid any karmic accountability as much as they possibly can, so that they're not going to be brought to a final judgment. And we see evidence of this in scriptures, in sacred scrolls. That's the last thing that these beings want, is in any way to be brought to account for what they're doing and the way they're living self-serving. So they'll fight to do anything they can to maintain their realm and limit the release of the indigos. So you've got to fight for your deliverance. You've got to fight, and not in the sense of striving, but you've got to be willing to fight, not so much outwardly, but inwardly, to really change and transform who you are and release your karma. So these are all the things that we've actually covered. Really surrendering, really letting go. So these are the things we've done, just a bit of a recap. And really 2020 was just a real kind of beginning. And there was a very good message sent by a brilliant remote viewer and prophet who I shared with the intercession group by Gerald O'Donnell, who is a brilliant remote viewer and consciousness teacher. And something that Gerald O'Donnell actually said in his message given by the One, and he very rarely gets a direct message from the One, but when he does, I listen to him, because the Council of Nine specifically told me that he was one person they told me to go and see. They said, he works with us. We love this man. You know, he's one of us. And I went and spent time with him in Florida. And he works very much in the higher portals and realms. And he actually used to teach the military and higher governments on this. And something that Gerald O'Donnell actually said in the message to the One, he said, 2020 was the beginning of the preparation for erasure of souls and sentient beings that are not working in the Father's best interest and are not working in the interest of oneness and the interest of unity and the interest of harmony for all. So they said what they've allowed is the bringing out of the unconscious into the conscious realm, around and about in the world, to bring out all the undercurrent stuff and the hidden stuff, bring it all out so that everyone can see without any doubt whatsoever who is basically working in the best interest of humanity and who is not. They said up until now it's been hidden and been difficult to see what's what. But that's changing. In 2021, you will see a significantly greater increase in darkness for that purpose. You will see it. And as Gerald said, he said, difficult times do lie ahead. But he said, rest assured, children, he said, from the Father, it's going to be a glorious time we're moving into. And just stay close to each other, he said, and stay united in spirit and in truth and in oneness with one another. And Grace is sending me messages saying that. So it's really a time to be actually united in spirit and in truth and having true sacred union and true oneness with one another and closeness, because that's what's going to feed and nourish our organisms, our inner parts, our spiritual parts, our higher dimensional bodies, by nourishing, soaking and cleansing one another. Dr. Henry Cloud, or Dr. Henry Townsend, sorry, he, a brilliant psychologist, actually said once to a patient, he said, if the church or the people of God actually did what they were meant to do in the Bible, I wouldn't have a job. He said, the reason I give people therapy is because the church or the body of Christ has no idea how to work together as a nourishing body of oneness for each other, confessing their sins and confessing their griefs and wounds to one another. He said, if they did, he said, that process in itself is what heals. My work would be unnecessary. He said, psychotherapists and psychologists are only necessary for now, like me, because as yet people are still afraid of oneness and afraid of connection, afraid of intimacy and afraid of really building a connected body due to wounds, mistrust, hate and fear. So that's really the next stage of evolution for indigos and for the people of God, so to speak. The Christ, the rainbow seed, is actually learning to be intimate with one another and building a real church, not what you see in the false church, but a real community. The original word in scripture was ecclesia. It wasn't church. It was ecclesia. And that meant a community of called out ones. That was the meaning, a community of called out ones. That's why originally when we set up City Awakening, I actually called it City Awakening Ecclesia in our deed, because the deed is because the ecclesia means a community of called out ones. When I was in the underground movement, that's actually what I was taught, that we were an ecclesia. And he actually said the original Bible always used the word ecclesia. The word church came from kirke, meaning synagogue or organized structure. So the original church was a living community, living organism, living body. So it was a group of called out ones. So really, that's what's being built in the new year with the work that City Awakening is doing, I know. And I know that I've been told it's gonna change a lot in a way. We'll be seeing a real connection and growth as many more come into the vine or into the grid and plug into the network. And those who are willing to drop their masks, literally, wear their wounds, or being clear, heal their wounds and be real with each other. Those who choose not to will be masked by the system. That's where it's going towards. Those who choose to drop their masks will basically be free. So this was all the stuff we went through last week about the whole, basically the deception of Christmas, the Tower of Babel, the Queen of Heaven, the dark period as we've been living in up until now. What I see as a very dark age we've been living in the last few thousand years and of humanity, which just follows many of the Hindu cycles, as you'll see shortly, which we've been in the process of coming out of, especially the last 200 years, and moving out even more into an age of enlightenment. So Grace is saying she's really feeling this. Who else is really feeling the power of this? I can certainly feel the presence of some higher masters today as I'm sharing. This message of the ecclesia to heal the wounds and navigate darkness in the new year I'm really getting that strongly. Because it will be dark times, everyone, and no one likes to hear that, but that is the truth, and that's what prophetic messages are meant to do. Dark times only in the sense of what you will see happen in the 3D earth around you. If you choose to plug into the grid and the network, it'll actually be the opposite. You'll be amazed how much you're going to be growing this year. It'll actually be a flourishing, prosperous, healing year for you in all areas of your life and soul. That's what I also see this year. So the message of today is to really take on board and learn not just from Christ, but learn from all the teachers, Buddha, Krishna, Elijah, Enoch, Moses, Dipama, the Buddhist teacher, Lahiri Mahasaya. What I'm about to share today is what all of these ones teach, and you'll see snippets and extracts from all of them today. So this is what we did last week. So now let's look at this and just go through some quotes that I thought looked really good. Some people awaken spiritually without ever coming into contact with any meditation technique or any spiritual teaching. They may awaken simply because they can't stand the suffering anymore. Can anyone relate to that? That you awaken because you just were fed up with suffering. Yes, Sammy's saying, yep. You're just fed up with pain, fed up with the agony you're experiencing in body, heart, soul, misery, rejection, bullying, wounding, just being in this low vibrational energy. And you just thought, fuck this, or just blow this. I may as well just awaken. Yep. There's a few here. I remember one of my cousins openly told me, he said, my biggest reason I awakened was I was shit scared of hell and still am. And I laughed. I just said lately to someone the other day, I said, all I know is whatever the church has taught in that area, I said, unfortunately, is tainted the definition of hell because it's based on Dante's Inferno of some devil and a fire and brimstone. But I said, I've seen the realms of astral hell and they're terrible. So there's no question there's astral lower realms of hell. And the Buddhists teach this, as well as the Christians, as well as the Christians. There are lower realms of astral hell or torment, so to speak. So yes, but a lot of that certainly is something that I know for me is one of the things that keeps me on my awakening journey, as well as the joy of awakening and the pleasure I get as I'm shifting things. I'm very wary and very cautious, and I certainly have no interest in being a test case to find out what's true and what's not true. All I know is that if there's higher realms of glory and higher realms of Enoch, there's going to be some lower astral realms as well. And like I said, I've seen them. So that's one of my reasons. I can openly tell you what awakened me, among others. So some signs, for example, that you're experiencing a dark night of the soul. There can be many things. So you're experiencing or have experienced ego death. So these are just some examples of things. It's only when you're alone you realize you're not alone. You have a newfound appreciation of your mortality. The purpose of your life has taken on a whole new meaning. You're more aware than ever before of the importance of your freedom. You're experiencing anomie and cognitive dissonance, which means things are kind of collapsing and falling apart within you. And you're seeing the world from a different perspective and realizing the moral and social structures of the world around you just aren't you. And you feel a huge conflict because on the one hand, there's that part of you that wants to live those moral and social norms, and another part in you that says, fuck that, I don't want to do that. I want to live my own truth and live my own life. That's a very big sign that you're either experiencing it or have been through it, or you're starting to go through it now. Because it's chaos is what's necessary to break things down. And to give you an example, one of the things that's helped me a lot in healing my foot, as it's slowly been recovering from an injury I had months ago, is one of the things that was happening was I was very jammed in my fascia on my foot and nothing seemed to clear it. And I worked with someone just the other day who got this very harsh metal comb and broke up my whole scar tissue on my foot. And to say it hurt was an understatement. Like, imagine someone going into a harsh, toothy metal comb and smashing in and chaotically breaking up all of the hard tissue that's jammed up in your feet. That wasn't fun. But all I know is that the day after, I was basically able to walk again for reasonable distances, which I haven't been able to do for a while. So chaos and turmoil and pain, when embraced and understood, is the best thing that can ever happen to you. You start to actually embrace it. Another one, you realize the ability to fall apart and come back together is real strength. I don't know about you, I fall apart regularly. I used to do everything to try and avoid it, but now I go, yeah, I fall apart regularly. I told Grace this morning, we were having a good chat about some of our different wounds and fears. And I just said to her, I said, I'm grateful how you support me, because I said, we joke about it, but I said, as you know, Grace, 25 years ago, I went through 5 very dark years where my health and life was absolutely dreadful. And I said, so when I hit certain things in my life, when real physical pain hits me, I really panic. I get scared. And that's where my body, my heart, my soul really needs nourishment. It needs loving. It needs reassurance. And although I know the scriptures and I tap into the healing power and I bring it in, I definitely need that feminine nourishment while I'm going through that to bring myself and encourage me into my own healing power, as an example. So I've learned that by allowing myself to fall apart and cry out to God and cry out to people around me for help, instantly gives me strength and helps me to actually move through things. So another example, you feel the deep sense of sadness, which often verges on despair. This is often triggered by the state of your life, humanity, and the world as a whole. You feel an acute sense of unworthiness. You have a constant feeling of being lost or condemned to a life of pain and suffering or emptiness, and you feel you can never escape that. You possess a painful feeling of powerless and absolute hopelessness. Your will and self-control is weakened, making it difficult for you to act. You lack interest and find no joy in things anymore that excited you once. You crave for the loss of something intangible, a longing for a distant place or to return home again. Can anyone relate to any of this? And Grace said, you're excellent at asking for help. Yeah, look, I've learned that, Grace. I've just learned that the Bible teaches that King David would cry for help. We live in a world where people think it's somehow noble and strong if you suffer and you say nothing about it in silence. People who do that generally end up with a lot of pain, end up dying young. So Steve, tick, for them, you'll hold, yep. So we were talking about a couple of family members. One of them who literally, when he's upset, lets everything out. The other one who stoically holds it all in. Guess which one gets sick a lot? And if you guess the one who stoically holds things in, you're right. The one who expresses and carries on and everyone around them virtually never gets sick. So here's another thing too to realize, and it's important to understand, that a dark night of the soul is a very different to depression. Depression is something that you can treat. It's something that with some encouragement, with some medication, in some cases, not that we obviously do any of that stuff, but with that, with some activities, maybe getting out and about in the sunlight, even doing gym and doing some weights has been proven to help depression. Going on to selenium, some natural substances, some massage, some loving, you can actually treat depression. Dark night of the soul is different. It's an existential thing. It's something where you actually feel your life, your identity, everything who you are is falling apart and nothing really comforts you, like nothing. You could have, if you're a guy, the most beautiful woman come and show you love, or as a woman, the most incredible man. You could have the best support network around you in the world. You could have people around you saying how great you are and believing in you, and yet you just don't care. You really don't care. You feel like existentially there's no reason anymore to live. It's the feeling I had in 2017, early 2018, where I really, really genuinely hit this point. And just to be clear, a genuine dark night of the soul isn't like this one-off event that happens and it's all over. As King David showed, you may have a few of them in your lifetime. So my one was genuine. I literally did not want to be on this planet. I didn't want to be around. I had no interest in anything. I had a great partner. I had great, Grace was fantastic. My sons were fantastic. had a good business. None of that actually bothered me. I didn't even feel any sense of responsibility anymore. If I left, I kind of thought that'll all be fine. It'll be their issue. And I was fine with it. There was no guilt. A true dark night of the soul, it just all goes out the window. You just don't want to be here anymore. You just don't want to survive. You're ready to go home. You're ready to let go. You feel existentially nothing. It's like everything is meaningless. Like, why do I work? Why do I have a job? Why am I even here? Why do I even talk to people? Why do I have sex with people? What's the point of it all? Why do I go out to a cafe and sit there and eat? Like, this is just some meaningless, reincarnation-y, bullshitty kind of nothingness. I remember actually saying to Source at the time, saying, all I am is a shitty accountant who does stupid tax stuff to help people with money that doesn't actually exist. And I said, what an absolutely pathetic existence I've lived. And I meant it. And I wasn't actually shaming myself. But this wasn't actually so that's why I said it's different to depression. Depression is where you feel down, you feel a failure. This is very different, the dark night of the soul. I was actually feeling, I just was like, yeah, just very practically. I mean, Warren Black, I said, when they talk about me when my life is finished, he was a great tax man. What did he do? Who gives a shit? Who gives a fucking rat's ass? I mean, what a stupid path. And yeah, I was a great father. Oh yeah, goody two shoes. I was some lovely father who turned up, had some kids and left. Yeah, great. That sounds pretty dumb too. Yeah, I just lived in the city, did my stuff, worked in a job, had a family and left. What an absolutely abysmal existence. That's what I said. I said, I have not impacted the planet. I haven't helped anyone. Please take me home. Let me reassess, and then I'll come back again. And this time, get it right. And it was within 30 days, I had my Council of Nine experience that changed my whole life. The point was, I literally hit that point. So Miko says, thank you for sharing this. I'm going through this. Yep, I can feel that, Miko. So yeah, you just accept it. You just go into it. And I felt like that even after the Council of Nine. That didn't really change for many months and a long time. Now, of course, different story. I don't have that same feeling at this time. I've been through some challenges lately, but by and large, I don't have that same feeling as I had. So there's a good scripture here. God is our refuge, and this gives you a bit of insight into the purpose of the dark night. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth be removed, though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though the waters roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with a swelling, though natural disasters hit us, though governments go crazy, though laws get passed everywhere, although people run around in hazmat suits vaccinating people. There is a river, the streams which make glad the city of God, the holy tabernacles of the Most High. God is in the midst of her, she shall not be moved. God shall help her, and at break of day. And there's the critical words. God shall help her, and at break of day. So why did God wait till break of day? Was God a sadist? Was God going like, this is fun watching this little motherfucker suffer? You know, I made this worm and I just kind of like it, you know, I like just doing shitty stuff to them and chucking them in fires. It's just my hobby because I've created all things and I get bored. So making these silly little humans suffer is a bit of a laugh. No, I can say not that I'm aware of, but definitely not is a short answer. The point is, imagine a caterpillar that was going through the cocoon. I've used this analogy before, and out of pity, you basically broke the cocoon and let it out early. It wouldn't be a butterfly. So the short answer is the purpose of suffering and a dark night of the soul and an existential crisis is basically so God can help you at break of day. In other words, at that moment where you've just broken, you really have broken. You've surrendered. You're gone. Your will, your ego is dead. It's no more. You're like, yeah, whatever. I mean, Steve says it's horrible. Yeah, Steve, I can remember thinking to myself, gosh, you know, here I am basically with kids and thinking I'm responsible. What a load of codswallop. That's actually where I was at. What a load of codswallop. I mean, you know, it's just ridiculous. How did I get myself into this stupidity? And I just really let go of it all. So, yeah, Grace is saying it's, I feel this is resonating with quite a few people actually. So, God shall help her at break of day. I love those words. In other words, and there's a wonderful scripture you'll see shortly, which is one of my favorite ones. The dark night of the soul comes just before revelation. When everything is lost and all seems darkness, then comes the new life and all that is needed. Oh, isn't that great? It comes. When the student is ready, the master, the teacher appears. Has anybody here heard that one? When the student is ready, the teacher appears. I'm sure a few of you have heard that one. Yep, quite a few of you have. So when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So that's why I know that when someone says to me they're keen to be mentored and they're not hungry, I'm not interested. When they're not really hungry. How much more the Father? Here's a scripture that I love, absolutely love this. This is a good one. So Jacob was the founder of Israel, or became Israel, and the Israel of God in the scriptures, and became very wealthy, very prosperous. They really had a relationship with the Most High. And what happened with him, though, his one Achilles heel, or his fleshly weakness, so to speak, he was a very good swindler and deceiver, and I can relate to him, I must admit. He was very good at that. He really trusted his own strength. He was a man who was clever. He was a man who knew what to do. And so what happened was he basically was coming back with a lot of wealth, and he heard his brother, who he deceived, because he deceived his brother out of his birthright, and his brother had vowed to kill him. And he heard his brother was coming to see him with a huge army, and he was scared. And he was coming back on the night before he was going to meet his brother. So keep in mind, this was a dark night for him. He knew his brother wasn't far away, and he couldn't run from him because he had armies and people. His brother was going to kill him. So I'm sure you would agree that's a dark night of the soul. And it says here, and Jacob was left alone, and they wrestled a man with him until the breaking of the day. Again. And when the man saw that he prevailed not against Jacob, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh, or his hip joint, was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. So he dislocated his hip. And the man said, "Let me go, for the day breaks." And Jacob said, "I will not let you go, except you bless me." I love those words. Today, we live in a fairly pathetic generation. We go through trials, we go through struggles, and in the end, when the struggle says, "Let me go," it's okay, I'm going now. What do most of us do? Oh, thank goodness we're out of it. Thank goodness it's over. Jacob didn't say, no, you're not going anywhere. I don't care that you've dislocated my hip. I'm not letting you go till you bless me. You've just bloomin' wrestled with me all night. You put my hip up. You ain't going, mate, till you bless me. That's what he says to him. How profound is that? He says, "I will not let you go until you bless me." That's the kind of thing that wins Olympic medals. That's the kind of thing that wins championships. That's the kind of things that make you a king, prince, queen with God. That's what makes you a triumpher, a defeater of death and death. That's what makes you a miracle prophet. That's what makes you a prosperous trader. That's what makes you all things. I will not let you go unless you bless me. And he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob," which, by the way, means supplanter or swindler. And he said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. For as a prince, you have power with God and with men, and you have prevailed." I mean, that gives me goosebumps. Don't know about you, but Israel means you are prince now who has power with God. You have prevailed. Notice he changed his name, he changed his vibration, he changed his whole frequency. So what's the purpose of suffering? I think you're starting to get a bit of an idea. The dark night of the soul is not just mean, it's ascension, it's shift, it's growth, it's transformation. Do you want to ascend fast? Expect to go through a bit as you're letting go of all your layers. The dark night of the soul is not merely having a bad day or week. It's a long, pervasive and dark experience. Steve, I know you've definitely been going through that. I can sense and see that in you. If you're experiencing the dark night of the soul, you will constantly carry around within you a sense of being lost. Your heart will always in some shape or form be in mourning, and that is because you long deep down to feel the presence of your soul again. The dark night of the soul is a purging process, calling us to release all that is unhealed, unnecessary, releasing all that is in the way of our highest good, like all, anything, all that is in the way of our highest good. There is 4 phases of the dark night of the soul: identity crisis, shattered belief system, withdrawing, and transformation. So if you've been through a dark night of the soul, or you're going through it right now, you'll know what I mean. At some stage, you hit an identity crisis. You then basically, you suddenly felt your whole beliefs about a situation, whether it was your purpose, about the way you saw relationships or life partners, the way you saw business. I've been through that recently. I've had a huge identity crisis. I've realized that my whole identity as an accountant, lawyer, working for money, working my ass off, it wasn't me. And a shattered belief system, as I realized that the whole thing, it's just not me anymore. I've outgrown that. It's a belief system that I've realized was flawed and something that was ineffective. The same feeling I had when I realized at the church and what I've been taught, a lot of it just wasn't true, wasn't me. Then withdrawing, going into hibernation to really sort it all out, and where almost nothing matters to you anymore. You don't care about anything, anyone, or anything, because all you want to do is just deal with things and finish things and transform things. And then here is transformation. So that's the dark night of the soul. So yep, Sam can relate to that. Sheldon, yep, I sense a lot of people do. So what more do you want? What more can you need? Strip me bare until I bleed. Tear me open, reveal my soul, rotten flesh, a stench so foul. Damn thoughts of a twisted mind, temptations of the unrefined. Reveal a life that hides within, it heals no words of fleshly sin. Darkness smells where none can see, shuns the light and tries to flee. I'll death remorseless consume this flesh, release this soul to begin afresh. Cease this constant mortal war, anguish pains cry out no more. Loose this bond to human plight, take me from this endless night. To God be the glory, amen. Yep, isn't it great, Grace? I love that. It's a beautiful poem. So you feel totally alone. You don't know many, if any, people that have gone through this. You don't feel like being bothered with loved ones and friends who don't understand because they think you're crazy, need help, or their own fears arise about it and make it even worse. You barely have energies and interests anymore. Grace is on the edge of her seat. Yeah, I love this stuff, isn't it, Grace? It's really good when you start to awaken and see all this. So, dark night of the soul acts as a great equalizer, ensuring we cannot merely spiritually outthink our way into more desirable experiences. Our old has just ended, been smashed, it's gone. We are nothing. We are absolutely smashed into pieces. We're just energy now. The beautiful thing about a dark night of the soul is it collapses your form, your illusion that you've created, and leaves you formless again. And I'll say it again. The great thing of the dark night of the soul, it crashes and smashes the form that you built up or label identity and leaves you formless without form and void, and gives an opportunity for you to say, let there be light, and create the very world that you want to create within you. If we understood that fully, we would be begging for more of it. We'd be saying, take my identity and just demolish it. We would be craving for it. This is why Christ, it said, was so different. This is why it says in Psalm 45 that Christ, it says Jesus, it says was above his brethren. It says, and not because he said he loved righteousness, and it says because it says that's what he desired. He made himself perfected and he mastered all these things. And he allowed himself to be destroyed and even crucified to remove all traces of his earthly flesh and identity to create a new heavenly higher form. So the dark night of the soul is the very thing that will transform you and be your salvation in the days ahead upon what's coming. Without the dark night of the soul, you will be left in a lot of agony with what's coming on the planet ahead. So it's a process of death leading you into a rebirth called spiritual awakening or ascension. So this is all part of ascension. It's really just a loss of meaning in your life as a prerequisite to accelerated spiritual growth and higher awakening. I mean, magnificent stuff, getting you absolutely ready for amazing days and amazing times ahead. So I'm sure by now people are starting to get a bit like, wow, feeling a little bit excited and seeing the possibilities of what this can mean for you. There can be no rebirth without a dark night of the soul, a total annihilation of all that you believed in and thought that you were. So the Bible has a lot to say about it too. Who's enjoyed all these quotes? I thought they were pretty cool. Yeah, it's fun. So Psalm 88, it's a great psalm to read about the dark night of the soul. I'm going to read the whole psalm. Others, I'm just going to quote extracts mainly. This one, I do feel to read this one, as well as extracts from other. So next, we're going to look at the dark night of the soul in the Bible and just a few scriptures. Then after that, we're going to follow into a bit about Buddhism and how that relates to it and show it from that perspective. And then we're going to finish off today with having a look at the hero's journey. So now we'll just go through a few scriptures. So when you read this here, you will see as dark a night of the soul as you'll ever see. O Lord God of my salvation, I've cried day and night before you. Let my prayer come before you. Incline your ear to my cry. For my soul is full of troubles and my life draws near to the grave. I'm counted with them that go down to the pit. I am as a man that has no strength. I think we would all agree that King David here is in a very dark night. Free among the dead, like the slain that lie in the grave, whom you remember no more, and they cut off from your hand. You have laid me in the lowest pit in darkness and the deeps. Your wrath lies hard upon me. You have afflicted me with your waves. You put away my acquaintance far from me. You've made an abomination to them. I'm shut up and cannot come forth. My eye mourns by reason of affliction. Lord, I've called daily upon you. I have stretched out upon you my hands to you. Will you show wonders to the dead? Shall the dead arise and praise you, Salah? Shall your loving kindness be declared in the grave, or your faithfulness in destruction? Shall your wonders be known in the dark, and your righteousness in the land of forgetfulness? But unto you have I cried, O Lord, and in the morning shall my prayer prevent you. Lord, why cast off you my soul? Why do you hide your face from me? I am afflicted and ready to die from my youth up. While I suffer your terrors, I am distracted. Your fierce wrath goes over me. Your terrors have cut me off. They came around about me daily like water. They compassed me about together. Lover and friend, you have put far from me, and my acquaintance into darkness. Another translation, which I think is more accurate, says that last verse, you have put my lovers and friends far from me, and the darkness is now my closest friend. Who can relate to that last verse? The darkness is now my closest friend. In other words, it's something you become accustomed to and very used to. And most people don't want to admit this because they're afraid they'll be labelled depressed, they'll be labelled autistic, they'll be labelled something, they'll be labelled mentally insane. My guess is this is going on in a lot more people who care to admit right now and what's happening on Earth. My guess is there's quite a lot of people in this group who are going through this. My guess, though, is admitting it is not so easy. Steve seems like my only friend at times. Yep. I've been there. In fact, that was a lot of my childhood, Steve, I would say, as well as various parts of my adulthood. So, yep, Christine feels it. Yep. And another one here. I will extol you, O Lord, for you have lifted me up and not made my enemies to rejoice over me. Lord my God, I cried out to you and you have healed me. Lord, you brought up my soul from the grave. You've kept me alive, but I should not go down to the pit. So again, you can see clearly in a pit, in a deep, deep pit. And he literally called himself out of it and was delivered. Oh, I did it again. Yeah. I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined unto me, and he heard my cry. He brought me up out of a horrible pit, out of the miry clay, and set my feet upon a rock and established my paths. He has put a new song in my mouth, even praise unto our God. Many shall see it and fear and put their trust in the Lord. So fabulous scripture there. Hear my cry, O God, attend unto my prayer. From the end of the earth will I cry unto you, and my heart is overwhelmed. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I. You have been a shelter for me and a strong tower from the enemy. So my heart is overwhelmed. I know I've certainly felt that at times over my lifetime, many a time. The last year especially, I felt it as I've been seeing what's been going on. But I know there's a sanctuary, there's a place of rest, there's a place where I'm taken care of, there's a place where I'm well looked after. Like it says, for you have been a shelter for me and a strong tower from the enemy. So Alex says he's been through it many times and carries it at different levels. Makes me realize why we feel we're not on our path. Exactly, Alex, yeah. Jesus, by the way, went through an absolute dark night of the soul. It clearly says that he, on the night before he was taken to be crucified, he said he actually agonized. In fact, it said he actually sweat drops of blood. That's been proven in medical terms that when you're under extreme anxiety or stress, that you can sweat blood. And Jesus actually sweat blood. He was so anxious about going to the cross and carrying the karma for the world, and I don't blame him. He was in a human body, and I wouldn't have done it in the first place, but he did it. And all he said was, not my will, but yours. Actually, I've done this once, so I was going to say this again. But again, God will help her and at break of day. So just some other scriptures we can have a look at. So Psalm 31 is a really good one. There's a number of them here, which we can go into. I'm just going to jump to different ones and just look at extracts of them, and you'll see little bits and pieces for yourself in case any of them resonate. But you can see here that he goes through here. He says, pull me out of the net they have laid privily for me, but into your hand I commit my spirit. And then he goes through here and says, have mercy upon me, O Lord. For I am in trouble. My eyes consumed with grief. My soul and my belly, my life is spent with grief and my years with sighing. My strength fails and my bones are consumed. So I think we would agree he's in a pretty dark place. So he goes through here, I'm forgotten as a dead man, I'm a reproach, and things like that. Then you got Psalm 42, which is another one where you can see it. It's all through the Psalms. So you got this here, verse 5. Why are you so cast down, O my soul? Why are you so disturbed within me? Put your hope in God, for I will yet praise him for the help of his countenance. This scripture, by the way, was one of the ones that helped me when I went through a very dark night, when I was 21, when I actually I just really, like I said, if you asked me about my childhood, I was shitty. I was carrying all this stuff, feeling the grief, feeling a constant darkness and separation, was desiring feminine companionship and yet not wanting it at the same time because I didn't trust women because of my upbringing. I was just basically very kind of nervous, very cautious of the feminine. And I remember getting engaged, and then it ended 4 months later. I wasn't given any support by my family about it. So I was in a pretty dark place at the time. And I can remember reading this psalm and thinking that's how I felt. I felt this hunger for God and saying, I know you can help me. And he did. I would pray this scripture over myself daily. And I was amazed. In the outward, my life just seemed pretty empty, but inwardly I started to transform. So you've got this here and that one here, Psalm 42. Psalm 43, he says the same thing. Why are you cast down, O my soul? Why are you so disturbed within me? Put your hope in God, for I will yet praise him. You've got Psalm 55 was another one on my list, which I've got here. It's some of you in the Pista Sophia group would remember this, but you can see this here. But David, in fact, felt so depressed or so much in a dark place. What he says is that fearfulness and trembling has come upon me. Then he says, oh, that I had wings like a dove, for then I would fly away and be at rest. I would wander off and remain in the wilderness. I'm sure we've all been there. So he's basically saying, oh, if I only had wings like a dove, I would just fly off, get out of this horrible planet, away from this horrible place. I would go away, I'd live in the desert and just get away from these awful, horrible people who break my heart. And we know that's what he's saying because later on, he talks about the grief he felt when his closest friends turned upon him everywhere and tried to get and actually gave him up, and to his enemies. So you can see here another one, the dark night of the soul of him feeling. Psalm 109, you can see that as well. Psalm 142 and 143 especially. In fact, I'll just quickly show you 142. Like I said, just extracts. He says here, bring my soul out of prison, that I might praise your name. And notice these last verses, the righteous shall compass me about, for you shall deal bountifully with me. In other words, bring my soul out of this dark, empty, meaningless place, that I may have joy, that I may praise and be an example for you. But let the righteous, let other higher vibrational frequency people of the same mind and heart and spirit and soul and spirit and in truth and sacred union and oneness with me, surround and connect with me, because then I will see your blessing upon my life with that true connection of the soul and the heart, so that I no longer feel this constant inner burning shame and loneliness. Psalm 143, probably the most powerful one of almost any of them. He says, for the enemy has persecuted my soul. He has smitten my life to the ground. He has made me to dwell in darkness as those that have been long dead. Therefore is my spirit overwhelmed within me. My heart within me is desolate. All these Psalms, I can say to you, I've lived them. I remember in 1998, 99, when my health, and Grace will remember this, my life had literally fallen apart. My belief system, my church, everything. I was being told when I was in chronic pain, an absolute mess, just to get faith and pull my head in. I was just in a horrible, horrible place. And I remember reading this psalm and I actually cried in my heart because I could relate to it so much at the time. And he says, hear me speedily, Lord, for my spirit fails. In other words, I've failed. I'm broken. I have no strength to fight this. I cannot stand here. I don't know what to do. I can't deal with this at all. Help me. Otherwise, I'm just going to go down into the pit, into astral hell, into an astral lower realm. I'll be just like all those souls running around right now on lower frequencies doing what they're doing. I'll be no different to them. Deliver me, Lord. Help me. You can see him crying out. There's no attempt to sanitize it. There's no attempt. He's in the dark night of the soul in every way, shape, and form. He's expressing his misery. He's expressing his grief without holding back. Another one that helped me a lot in my dark night of the soul, which I went through that time, was Lamentations 3. It's a long one, so I'm not going to read all of it, but you can just read bits of it. I am the man that has seen affliction by the rod of his wrath. He has led me into darkness, but not light. He is against me. He's turned his hand against me all day. My flesh and my skin is made old. He's broken my bones. I have gall and travail, bitterness. I'm in dark places. He's hedged me about. My chain has been made heavy. When I cry and shout, he shuts out my prayer. He's enclosed my ways. He was a bear lying in wait, a lion in secret places. He's made me desolate. He's bent his bow. He's made me a target for his arrow. He's just shot his arrows at me. I'm a derision to my people. People laugh at me. They mock me. They think I'm stupid. They think I'm an idiot. They think I'm pathetic. They think I'm an absolute moron. They think I'm an irresponsible father. They think I'm a stupid mother who can't even get a handle on my kids. And they think that I'm a dumbass in business who can't fail in anything I do, and I'm a failure in everything I touch. They laugh at me. They scoff at me. They may not say it in their mouth. They may not say it in my face, but they feel it in their heart. And I know it because I feel it because I'm sensitive. I'm an empath. You can see and hear and feel all this here. He says he's filled me with bitterness. He's made me drunk with wormwood. He's broken my teeth with gravel stones. He's removed my soul far from peace. I've forgotten any prosperity or any sense of abundance is long gone from my heart. Everyone else around me is talking about abundance, success, and how I'm in financial prosperity. I don't feel any of that stuff. I feel absolutely broke. I feel misery. I feel like I'm never going to break out of this cycle. I feel broken. I feel like I'm doomed to slavery for the rest of my fucking life. What he's saying here, this level of strength. And he says, my strength and my hope is perished from the Lord. Remembering my affliction, my misery, the wormwood and the gall. It's a powerful one. He says, my soul remembers all this and is humbled in me. Another translation says, and bows down in shame. In other words, because I know all this is true, my soul bows down in shame. I feel ashamed. I feel broken. I feel like I'm never going to get out of this. I feel like I can hear all the best spiritual teachers in the world, but it's never going to really change. And he says, this I recall to my mind, and therefore I have hope. It is the Lord's mercies they are not consumed. It's his compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. And then he goes on here to say, the Lord is my portion. I will hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul that seeks him. It is good that a man should hope and wait for the salvation of the Lord. It is good, and here's the one to listen to for the day. It is good for a man or for a woman that he bears the yoke in his youth. It's a good thing. In other words, when you go through the pain in your youth, the younger you go through it, the easier. I had the shittiest childhood I could almost imagine. Stuff that I've only just been remembering. I've even been talking to Grace about it, and I was talking to William about it, and he spent some time with my family just recently, and he even said to me, how did you not shoot yourself when you were a kid? I pretty much said, well, I didn't have a gun. But I actually remember, let's just say, I was being really truthful with everyone and sharing part of me you've never heard. When William and I were talking about this, I even said, you know the best time in my childhood? He goes, what? I said, I went through 3 months when I had no parents. They were away for a long time. And I said, I loved it. I said, I didn't want to be parented at all. Not in the slightest. I said, that was like brilliant. I loved it. And there's more I would tell, but I won't say on a public webinar. But yeah, it was literally, that was how bad it was for me. And I remember the bitterness I felt when I read the scripture, and it hit me when I like 20 odd years ago. And I realized it. All the scripture related to me, and I just felt a mess. I just collapsed internally. And I remember then reading the rest of his scripture and saying, you know what? I'm really glad I bought the yoke when I was young. And I am now. Now that I see what's happening on planet Earth right now with all this craziness that I'm seeing, I sit there and in my heart, I'm extremely relieved and grateful that I went through that path. I went through it because it meant I was ready for this time. It meant I could get up here and do this webinar. It meant I could become a service to humanity. And now all I've been saying in the last 2 months, I'm ready to serve. I'm ready to serve next year. I'm ready to help humanity next year and the coming years ahead. These people need it. I'm not going anywhere until this gets sorted. Yes, I'm keen to ascend, but we're going to help people. No one should perish that's not meant to. And that's why he says he sits alone and keeps silence, because he's born it. In other words, this whole scripture is saying he knows his karmic burden. He knows his past life sins. He feels it. He feels it in his being. He feels the sin of his youth and the iniquity and the damage that he's done. Deep down, he feels and realizes how much pain he's caused people, how much damage he's caused people around him by his thoughts, by his actions, or by her actions, by what she's done. And at some stage, I'm sure Grace will share her journey, but she's been telling me a powerful realization of much of the damage she's caused to people. Now, she's been going back in time and amending things with people energetically, going back right through timelines to fix things with people, where she saw that she hurt men that she was seeing, hurt others. I've been doing similar stuff, I was telling her, going back, rebuilding the altars, basically fixing things, making amends, making restitution. Because that's what the dark night of the soul is meant to do, is to get things right and get things sorted out and help redeem everyone. You can see it in Job 3 and Job 10 and Jeremiah 38, which I won't read all of that. Jeremiah 38 talks about how he was actually in a pit, cast into a deep pit for many days. Job 3, I actually will go to that one because it's so powerful what he says. He says, let the day perish when I was born. In other words, let it be wiped from the timelines. Let the very day that I came on the planet Earth be erased, be removed, and be taken out of existence. Let the day be darkness. Let darkness and the shadow of death stain upon it. Let a cloud dwell upon it. He even says, let that night fall upon it. Let it not be joined to days of the year. Let it not even be astrologically counted ever again. Let there be a night be solitary. Let there be no joyful voice. You can actually see how the astral realms and the portals work here, by the way, but that's another message. He says, let the stars of the twilight be dark, because it did not shut up the doors of my mother's womb, nor hid sorrow from my eyes. Why did I not die in the womb? Why did I not give up the ghost when I came out of the belly? You can see that here. And if you've ever thought you've whinged in your life, you haven't. I don't think anyone here would have come close to matching this guy, what he's saying here. Taking in everyone, who's relating to this at some level? Who can really feel this and can feel how going into this valley of darkness is actually helping you? Yeah, Grace is saying, fuck, this is super. Yeah. Doing this helped change my life when I was younger, and it's changed my life more than ever recently. Yep, Steve, Patricia. Christine, yeah. So now as we're getting to moving into Hero's Journey, let's have a quick look why suffering is necessary. So the Bible talks about suffering as part of crucifying or destroying our lower nature or getting mastery over it. 1 Peter 4, he who has suffered in the flesh has ceased from sin. That's actually what it says. Now I'll say that again. He or she who has suffered in the flesh has ceased from sin. That's very powerful. So sufferings happen to actually get you to cease from your lower central nature that keeps you in samsara, in the cycle of rebirth. Galatians, Paul says our old man is crucified with Christ and we die daily. Philippians 4, if you want to participate in his resurrection, which means the ascension, then you have to participate in sufferings or dark night of the soul. If you don't want basically to suffer, don't expect to ascend. Just ask instead that you go through an easier path in samsara. where it'll be a little bit easier, where you can live in a better life in your next reincarnation. And I mean it. If you're not willing to go through a dark night of the soul, you're not willing to suffer, then don't basically violate universal law and be a dum-dum and pray, I want to ascend and want to experience none of the sufferings. The short answer is, if you're not willing to do that, ask a more realistic prayer. Ask, I don't wish to participate in any sufferings or shifts, so please just let my next lifetime be easier. I actually prayed that prayer myself almost 3 years ago when I acknowledged that I was done and I had nothing left in my darkest night. I just said, look, I can't do this anymore. Take me home and help me to make sure my next lifetime I don't fuck up my path again. And it didn't work for me. I was told that I had no choice and I had to stay here and sort this out. So there you go. But at least it was an honest prayer. As Grace says, didn't work, Spirit keeps calling me back. So the short answer is, and doesn't mean, by the way, that you have to go and be chopped up and killed or anything. It just means being willing to go through that inner process of inner death and inner crucifixion and allowing yourself to go through that and really being willing to go through those agonizing struggles and whatever it takes to move yourself into your ascension path and resurrection. That's why we've got the Lord's Prayer, by the way, is to ease our suffering. That's why we've got masters and teachers. That's why we've got karmic clearers to help make it easier, to lower your suffering. Because karmic clearing using codes and pictographs like we do and using energies and activations can clear a lot of karma really quickly. That's why tantric cosmic union can clear a lot of stuff very quickly. That's why karmic release work can clear stuff very quickly. In other words, it can fast track things. That's why Christ came and fast tracked a lot of karmic clearing for you. So in other words, yes, you're going to go through things, but there are ways, as Sri Yukteswar and Lahiri Mahasaya taught their disciples, to minimize suffering, using everything from astrological arm banglets to homeopathy, herbal medicine, really good anointed chiropractors. I've got someone like that, anointed herbalists, anointed healers, anointed teachers. There's many anointed like chiropractors, healers. I see quite a number of them who can give you herbs, give you energies that can clear things faster. And like we said, do karmic clearings. The point is, though, you still have to participate and clear the karma and go through the sufferings. And that's why you get given the Lord's Prayer to say, lead us not in the temptation. In other words, lead us not into being led off into our karmic past patterning is another way of looking at it. Let us not be led by our lower nature into our past karmic patterning that will increase our suffering in this lifetime. Help us to overcome that in an easier fashion. I'll guarantee you, if you prayed the Lord's Prayer every day with meaning within a year, your suffering would be significantly less. I will guarantee you that. That's how powerful it is. Matthew 18, take up our cross and follow him. Without suffering, our lower nature prevails and keeps us attached to samsara, the cycle of life and death, birth and rebirth. Buddha says the root of suffering is because of attachment. Once we release our attachments, desires, and are still, suffering comes to an end. And James Allen, in As a Man Thinketh, says a very similar thing. He goes, suffering only exists because of our lower state of mind and thinking and desires. Once we release and let go of that and realize there's no need for it, suffering comes to an end. So the root of suffering is only because of attachment. And I want to emphasize that. If you can think of any suffering in your life right now, it's attachment. If you're suffering right now because of an issue with your family, it's because you're attached to your kids. If you're suffering like I was in recent times around an injury that was really grieving me and upsetting me, it's because I was attached to my body. I was too attached to quick results. I was too attached, basically, to the pain and not having it, rather than seeing what it was and transmuting it and working with the karmic patterning. If you're having suffering around finances, it's because you're attached to money. If you had no attachment to finances and you had no money, you really wouldn't give a rat's ass. If you truly weren't attached to your kids, if something happened to them, you let them release and say, well, I was only a custodian and I now release them back to source. You think, oh my gosh, it's almost impossible. Well, that's why people keep transmuting back and forth into samsara, because it is difficult. And that's why Christ said, he goes, without God, it's impossible, but with God, all things are possible. So the point is, you really can, and that's where many of you work with Grace with a quantum collapse process. She learned from Dr. Demartini, but does actually help you collapse things and see the duality of all things. So, and I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they'll be his people, and God shall be with them. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying, no more pain, for the former things are passed away. And he sat upon the throne and said, I make all things new. So the tabernacle of God, and when you have a higher connection like this, and you become unattached to things of the earth, suffering by and large ends. That's why Buddha himself reached enlightenment. They said with Dipa Ma, one of the great Buddhist teachers who I've been really studying a bit lately, she literally, they said, nothing fazed this woman, like literally nothing, because she literally removed all attachment and dissolved all her attachment. Nothing fazed her. Smith Wigglesworth, the great healer, he bought a new hat that cost him a fortune, was walking down next to the Thames River. A wind came and blew the hat straight off into the river, his brand new hat. His assistant was horrified, went to try and get it and couldn't. He turned around and Wigglesworth was walking completely calm and serene. He goes, sir, your hat. He goes, that's okay. He said, I'll get another one. And he smiled at him and kept walking. Didn't even lose a beat. That's unattachment, absolute unattachment. The four noble truths of Buddhism are stated in simple terms as suffering, pain, and misery exist in life. Suffering arises from attachment to desires. Suffering ceases when attachment to desire ceases. Freedom from suffering is possible by practicing the Eightfold Path, which, by the way, is another way of saying the 4 stages of enlightenment, which some have called the Eightfold Path, and break each stage into 2. John says, commands us not to love the world, nor the things of the world, the lust of the flesh, the body realm, the lust of the eyes, the thought realm, and the pride of life, ego. Once we conquer them, we have conquered Satan, we've conquered the delusions of the flesh, and we've conquered the world. And that's why John kept saying, my little children, fear not, and for he has overcome the world. This is why we're here, everyone. You're here to overcome the world. If you're looking at 2020 and thinking the shit hits the fan, what would Christ be saying to you, or Buddha? They'd be saying, you lucky son, you lucky little buggers. They wouldn't use those words, I'm sure. Unfortunately, they've got me to speak at the moment. But yes, they'd be saying, you lucky guys. Charles Finney, I remember saying that to me when he visited me just 15 years ago. And I was crying and said what a great path he had. He said, mate, he said, nothing compares to what you guys are entering into. He said, you guys are in the greatest time and the greatest days ahead on planet Earth. You are part of the great ascension. You guys are so lucky. It says that all the prophets looked for rejoicing. Jesus, and if we're speaking to Lahiri Mahasaya, Jesus and all these right now, he'd be saying, gosh, you guys are so fucking fortunate. You really are. You are in the beginnings of the great ascension. You're in the preparation for the movement of the golden age, the Aquarius age, the Christ consciousness, for goodness sake. And you're carrying on about your suffering, you lucky buggers. Honestly, you want to swap? Great. Yeah, no problem. I'll swap with you. I'm sure that's what many of the angels will be saying to you right now. This is a glorious time. When the things of the earth are collapsing like they are, this means that not just we are getting ready for ascension, but a whole planet, a whole people group, a whole civilization. This is extraordinary. It really is. That's why suffering is necessary. Babaji, Lahiri Mahasaya tells a story of when he met with Babaji, and Babaji took him into a mountain, and next minute he saw this magnificent palace, and he was in wonder because the palace was everything he'd ever dreamed of. And Babaji actually said, this is yours, by the way. This is your gift. It's been given to you. And he couldn't believe it because it was his whole dream that he could remember. And then after being there for some hours, he suddenly thought, this is actually not what I wanted at all. This is an illusion. This is empty. I'd rather just be sitting in the mountains with Babaji at home. And instantly the palace disappeared and Babaji smiled and said, well done. He goes, all that was a dream. He said, that was one of your last remaining desires of the fourth realm that was keeping you trapped within these realms of cycle, death and life. He said, now you're free. He goes, now I'll teach you. So, once again, so Buddha gave 4 stages of enlightenment, which I've taught some of you. So I'll probably spend more time on another message on all of this, and I know we're covering a bit today. Who here is kind of, everyone enjoying this, by the way? I can speed this up or keep going and really go through this, but if I went through it properly, it'll probably take another 30 or 40 minutes. Either that or I can cut some of it short. What would you rather, everyone? Grace wants me to keep going, so much power. How about everyone else? I really felt to go deep today and really hit this on many, many levels, because I feel it's going to give everyone a really powerful kickstart for the new year. Grace is drinking deeply. Yep, Sheldon. And like I said, you can be honest with me. Sheldon, quite enjoying. Alex, happy. Great, because it's going to probably take about another 30 minutes. So just wanted to be upfront with you. So, Buddha gave 4 stages of enlightenment. Sotapanna, Sakadagami, Anagami, and Arahant. So these are what's called a path to release from suffering in Buddhism. Nirvana is the highest state you can attain, which by and large means stillness to all desires and free from suffering, or heaven as some call it. We become free of the 10 fetters, what's called shackling us to samsara. So there's 10 fetters basically. So the 4 stages are Sotapanna, the first one literally meaning one who enters the stream. So like born again, beginning your path, you become devoted to your spiritual quest. This is when you have that really transformational experience where you just, something happens in you and you realize that you no longer have a separate self. It's like you realize that yourself that goes through your eyes, you have this spiritual being. You're not a separate self, you're like a spiritual being. You get this hunger for a spiritual path and you start your path on a spiritual quest and you have this hunger and devotion to it. And most likely, most, if not everyone on here has probably entered that stage by now. You will know if you have, because there will be a moment in your life or part where through a suffering, through an event, through various things and experience, you really fundamentally had this shift that got you onto this point. Can everyone here think about, know when you had that moment, when you absolutely had that realization that you're like not this kind of self in your body, that you see yourself right now and that you're a spiritual being and that you started to hunger for the spiritual path and begin that commitment to it? Everyone here pretty familiar with that now or being encountered that? If you definitely know you had that moment, just type a Y. Just, yep. Okay, a couple of people anyway. Few, yep. Yep, that's the moment when you really do get born again or you start your path. So you have a maximum of 7 rebirths before nirvana. In other words, you're guaranteed nirvana. That's what Buddha taught. In other words, you'll be taken into a zone where you will go through 7 lifetimes to get there. So Sakadagami is the second one. This is the next level, which is really in many ways similar to the first, except you just hit a deeper level. And you get, and you move, and you have this next level awakening. And you find a lot of your attachments, aversions, your suffering, a lot of your hatred, anger, and greed, which is still around in your first path, and you still notice strong emotions, become a lot less. So the big difference of this stage is that whereas in the first stage, you very much had this, you had this revelation of a separate self, you started to become aware of your anger, aware of your hatred and your greed. So all this stuff you became aware of, but was still very much in your life. Now you start to notice a lot of it drops off, or if it's around, it's much less. So when it says no anger, probably more accurately, it becomes less strong, more managed, less frequent. You start to become even more aware of your separate spiritual self. You start to really manage your emotions and your energy like never before, manage your desires, manage your attachments. So the second stage, that stage of enlightenment is another stage. It's like a next level growth. It's like a maturing within that. So whereas the first one is like generally a real awakening, the second one is an awakening, but it's often in a way more a gradual one and happens in stages, or it may happen where suddenly you have this deeper realization which comes into being and you see the changes start to come into being. That one Buddha taught, only one more rebirth guaranteed before entering nirvana. So you'll only need one more rebirth on earth. You will have to come back and do one more round, but you'll come back as in an incarnation, as a spiritual family, something like that, that will pretty much guarantee you that path. The third one was anaganami, which literally means one who does not come. This one here is guaranteed not to rebirth on earth. What will happen is they've abandoned the 5 lower fetters of belief in the self, doubt or uncertainty, attachments to rites and rituals, in other words, superstitions like your rituals, sensual desires and ill will towards other people. So this one now has really let go of all that. You've moved into a much deeper state of unconditional love. Sensual desires are very much, by and large, much more minimalistic in your life, almost non-existent. Rites and rituals are gone. Self-doubt or uncertainty is by and large almost completely eradicated in your life. If it's there, it's very occasionally just pops up briefly, is dealt with and you move through it. The main thing with the anagami is you've really moved beyond a lot of the negative emotions, and it doesn't mean you don't experience them, but you experience them in a different way now. Like anger, more righteous anger for something. You may have and even that, there will be a difference in it. The main thing with anagami is you still have a preference for positive over negative experiences. In other words, you're still very much in that thought realm with unresolved karma in your thought realm. You haven't really mastered meditation fully. So you're very much still in that thought realm, desiring positive experiences. You're trying to avoid pain. You're still preferring to have that kind of stuff and have pleasurable experiences and experience joyful manifestations. And that's an important part of what you go through. But that stage there, you're now guaranteed no more rebirths on earth. You'll just simply have to have a rebirth in a higher planet. And one example is here in Lyoka, but Sri Yuketswa I talked about, which is a higher 8th dimensional planet. So you may get reborn in a 5th dimension or 8th dimensional planet somewhere else with people who don't have any bodily earthly karma at all, and they're just dealing with what's called their astral or subtle karma. That's all they're dealing with. So you'll be guaranteed a rebirth on a higher planet. And the final one is Arahant. This is one, a fully enlightened being who's abandoned the 10 lower fetters entirely, which like greed, anger, that sort of stuff. All residual traces of a separate self and positive, negative experiences is over. You've learned to dissolve the dark nights of the soul. You're so unattached anymore that your negative experiences you just see as neutral, and you see your positive as neutral. You've completely collapsed and dissolved everything. The things and attachment of this world literally have no hold on you at all. You could lose all your money tomorrow and you just don't really miss much of it. A beat. You just go, oh, well, that was fun while it lasted, and then it's gone. You could lose all your Bitcoin tonight and have none and go, okay, well, that's a bit of a bugger. Oh, well, whatever. I'm going to have to look at something else now. That's how you would be. I would say you'd be a very rare individual in that place, but that's why there's very rare individuals who reach this. Your cravings, your dissatisfaction are gone. In that place, because you have no attachment, you've now entered, you've already entered nirvana in this earth, so you won't have to come back to this earth or this galaxy. You're purely a nirvana spiritual entity master being now, just happening to use a human body as a temporary vehicle before you go back to wherever you're going to, because you're no longer attached to it. So why do we go through suffering and dark nights of the soul? I think everyone now knows. It's to be able to move through these cycles. Without suffering, you would stay in your delusions. That's the truth. Imagine if you had no suffering at all. Imagine, for example, you were left alone by the masters. Imagine you were just allowed to accumulate as much money as you wanted in whichever way you wanted to do it, have sex whenever you felt like it, when you felt like it, regardless of who it was. You were able to literally have perfect health, to go off and play video games all day, every single day, never do any exercise, eat whatever food you want, and have the time of your life. Some would say that sounds pretty cool. The short answer to that one is you would get, as soon as you finished your time on Earth and you reconnected with your higher self, you'd be like, oh shit, I didn't even start my path. So you'd be saying, why didn't you do something about it? Why didn't you kick my ass? And they'd be like, well, we didn't want to upset you. So you wouldn't be all that impressed. So literally that's why we choose our experiences, to make sure we do our blooming path. I was actually shown when I was with the Council of Nine, I actually told the councils before I incarnated, because I saw how many lifetimes I'd been a swindler and done some, and let money and power take me off my path. I said, can you make sure whenever I start making too much money from doing things off path, but you take it from me like really quickly, can you please make sure I don't get rich on the wrong path? I actually said that to them. Can you make sure, I beg you, otherwise I'm not going back. So hence, every single time I started to go off track and make money, I'd lose all my money instantly. It would be like miraculous. I was convinced I was under a curse. Hindsight, I wasn't under any curse. I just basically didn't, my higher self wanted to make sure I suffered severely financially until I sorted my fucking shit out and stopped basically swindling people and making money by basically being a power-hungry, egotistical, male, patriarchal idiot. So I made sure that I didn't do it. And the councils made sure of that too. So suffering is your best friend. It makes sure you don't go off your path. Now, it doesn't mean you become a martyr and walk around going, great, well, can someone get a whip and beat the shit out of me? That might be fun if you're going to do some BDSM or have some sub-dom. That could be fun, but not something that's necessarily to be done in any other form whatsoever. So even the Earth's, even the cycles and astrological. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Kali Yuga and the various yugas, but there's even suffering and there's different realms here. So we've had the dark age, which was before. We're now moving into higher ages. We're moving towards the next stage, the bronze and the silver, and then the golden age. John of the Cross talks about the dark night of the soul. He probably, that's where the expression came from a poem which he wrote. So it's called the dark night, where darkness representing the hardships, struggles and difficulties the soul meets in detachment from the world and its pleasures, senses and desires, and reaching the light of the union with the Creator. There are several steps in this night which are related in successive standards. The main idea of the poem can be seen as a painful experience you endure as you seek to grow in spiritual maturity and union with God. When Enoch walked with God and was not, rest assured, he didn't do it through living a simple life. He did it through obedience and through suffering. Moses was the same. It says with Christ that he was perfected by his suffering in Hebrews to walk with God. So if you want to walk with God, pain, suffering is going to be there until you release your attachments. The good news of that is the faster you can dissolve your attachments to anything, the quicker you will move through suffering. And Dipama, it's said, but she literally moved into enlightenment in 6 days through the 4 stages. She was so determined, she meditated and went so deep in her meditation, she dissolved all of it within 6 days. Her masters were absolutely in shock. So it's possible to do all kinds of things if you're really sincere. So she literally dissolved all her attachments in 6 days. So good news for all of you is that he divides his poem into 2 books that reflect the 2 phases of the dark night. The first is difficult, which is the one we're in now on Earth, and the second, absolutely horrible. But the good news for all of you is that you're going to break your patterns even more, and you're going to move into a deeper ascension, because it's going to go from difficult to absolutely horrible over the next few years. So if you think it's been difficult this year, it's going to get absolutely horrible. Who's excited about that? Who's like really excited about the fact it's going to get absolutely horrible and they're ready for it because you just want to ascend? Anyone brave enough to say, yeah, Grace is very excited, bring it on. Steve is lol. Steve, I know you're looking forward for it to getting absolutely horrible. Difficult's not enough for you. I'm not getting any yeses on this one. Alex, love a challenge. Yep, so you've still got a bit of work to do on enlightenment, everyone. That's the moral of the story we all have. Alex, love the challenge. Well, we've got Grace and we've got Alex, and that's it at the moment. So, so funny. So, for St. John of the Cross, the God seeker is initiated through the loss of material and psychological possessions, a direct challenge to their fundamental sense of safety and security. The ego is attached to power, control, reputation, and material things. During the dark night of the soul, we are compelled to open our hands and let go of all that the ego values. The soul then tumbles into a state of unknowing, so profound he's propelled into isolation, for the journey requires solitude. So when you lose your material possessions, everyone, and psychological possessions, when your partners walk out on you, when you lose your money, when you have a health challenge which you really have to walk through, celebrate. And yes, I will admit on the health one, that was the one I didn't do as well with lately, but I managed to work that one through and move into the process. And how did I do it? Just by owning it and going into the darkness. So the dark night of the soul will result in loss. And that's to bring gain. That's simple. Eckhart Tolle, who some of you have heard of, puts it really beautifully when he talks about the dark night of the soul. So I'll just go to his blog. He was asked about it. And all he said is that he has experienced it. He said it is a term used to describe what one could call a collapse or perceived meaning of life, an eruption of your life into a deep sense of meaningless. The inner state in some cases are very close to what is conventionally called depression. Nothing makes sense anymore. There's no purpose to anything. Sometimes it's triggered by an external event, a disaster, an external. The death of one close to you can trigger it, premature death if your child dies, or if you built up your life and given it meaning, and the meaning you'd given your life, your activities, your achievements, where you're going, what is considered important, and the meaning you've given your life collapses. It can happen if something happens to you that you can't explain anymore, some disaster which seems to invalidate the meaning your life had before. Really what has collapsed is a conceptual framework for your life, the meaning that your mind had given it. So that results in a dark place. But people have gone into that, and then there's a possibility that you merge out of that into a transformed state of consciousness. Life has meaning today, but there's no longer a conceptual meaning you can necessarily explain. Quite often it's from there that people awaken out of a conceptual sense of reality which has collapsed. This was from a guy, by the way, who when he hit his just met and lived on a park bench and was homeless for 2 years. That's how he handled it. They awaken into something deeper, which is no longer based on your concepts in your mind, a deeper sense of purpose or connectedness of a greater life, not dependent on explanations or conceptual anymore. It's a kind of rebirth. The dark night of the soul is a death that you die. What dies is the egoic sense of self. Death is always painful, but nothing real has actually died there, only an illusory identity. Now, it is probable, but some people who have gone through this transformation realize that they had to go through it in order to bring about a spiritual awakening. Often it's a part of an awakening process, the death of the old self and the birth of the true self. And then he goes on for quite a bit longer. So it's a great one there. So now finally, to end today, we're going to have a look at the hero's journey and how that fits into all of this, just because it gives a little bit more of an insight into what this is all about. And like I said, it's a process, and the main thing to realize, and the danger that you can hit when you go into this journey, is to move into repression. So what I would say to you today is quite the contrary. Don't go, oh gosh, I've got to put on a brave front. I'm saying the opposite. If you're actually feeling distraught, let it out. If you're suffering, let it out. There's an old saying, if you've got a fart, let it out. Don't hold it in. Let it out and deal with it. So basically, let it out and deal with it. So if you've got something, if you're really suffering and you need help, you ask for it. That's why there's teachers. That's why there's masters. That's why there's healers. That's why we run City Awakening. That's why I run Awakening Within, because we know the need to help people karmically shift their stuff, which can become overwhelming, and to release from suffering and move into a deep sense of joy and purpose. So these are the 12 stages of the hero's journey, which we go through. And Grace defined it into 3 stages, which was basically along the lines of, departure, initiation, and then coming home. So there's actually 12 stages of the hero's journey written. So Miko's been crying nearly every day. Now I feel much better. Excellent, Miko. It's great. Yeah, no, look, I mean, I cry and get pretty miserable at times. In fact, at the moment, and I just, not miserable in a sense, just feeling the pain and the sorrow. So the ordinary world, this is where the hero exists before his story begins. This was where I was an accountant, or Steve was doing what he was doing, or Christine was doing what she was doing, or Grace was doing what she was doing. And Christine being a pharmacist and, living her life and farming or whatever else. And Steve, a good teacher and copywriting and good family man. Grace is a good mum, me as an accountant, lawyer, and musician who look really successful. And you develop a safe space in that. So you become a human and you're just living this life, but then at some stage, there's a call to adventure or call to action. So something happens that becomes a direct threat to you, to your family, you lose a job, someone close to you dies, a child dies, a health matter happens, something happens that wakes you up. It disrupts your life and presents a challenge or quest that must be undertaken. And you go, okay, I better get moving. In a way, that's where Earth's at now, and the call to adventure. And what we're seeing now is the refusal of the call happen for many. So although the hero may be eager to accept the quest, at this stage, he or she will have fears, second thoughts, deep personal doubts whether you're up to this. I went through all of that really severely. In this point, the hero refuses the call, and Grace will be smiling and having a bit of a chuckle because she remembers the number of times she refused her call and straight out said, I'm not doing it. And I will smile and say the same thing, and I'm sure a few of you would be the same. So the problem he faces may seem too much to handle and the comfort of home more attractive than the road ahead. So this is where we bond with the reluctant hero. So it's just where it becomes too much to handle and the comfort of home is far more attractive. In other words, it's so much easier. God, it's just so much easier if we don't basically go this path and we just keep life really simple and things like that. So it's just that. So this crucial turning point where the hero though realizes my life's getting worse, because what generally starts to happen is when you refuse the call is like Jonah, you end up in a whale. So suddenly things go downhill. I remember finances might start going down. You hit an even bigger health crisis. You have something else from your higher self to whack you to make sure you're not going to miss it this time. You have eczema all over, or in my case, RSI and a real severe injury, or loss of a business that I really valued and really loved. I lose a business that I really loved. You lose someone you really love. A marriage breaks up that you really cared about. You end up with a horrible fight with an ex-partner, which just gets vicious and they get worse and worse with you. You end up in a financial hole like you could not believe was possible. Just when you think you're getting ahead, it's just getting worse. You get an even bigger health issue. You suddenly get a government investigation that goes on and on and on, and you've got nowhere to hide. And you go to all the normal stuff and nothing that you're doing is working. At this point, the hero meets a mentor. So that's usually a physical mentor, a person on this earth who can guide them, like a spiritual teacher or guru or leader. Occasionally, it can be a divine encounter. Most of my situations was with a human mentor, but of course, probably my biggest dark night of the soul that I had was the Council of Nine, where I got the direct angelic mentors who turned up and started mentoring me ever since and told me you don't need human mentors anymore. But it took me 50 years to get to that point. So usually 99.9% of the time at this point, you'll be connecting with God yourself, but you'll be getting human mentors or teachers or leaders to help you to fast track things. At this point, you could be given an object or symbol of great importance, insight into dilemma, wise advice, practical training, a course of study, a bit of work, a bit of guidance. Whatever the mentor provides the hero with, it serves to dispel his doubts and fears and give him the strength and courage to begin his quest. So now the hero gets strength and gets courage because the mentor helps him to believe in himself, or her to believe in himself. They start to think maybe it's possible. And that's why you attract to someone. I've had both female mentors and male mentors who come into my life. I like both. Originally, I tried to avoid female ones like the plague because of my trust issues around women. But as time went on, I realized them more than ever. And now to the point where even 2 nights ago, when I was taken into a deep realm, I even said to the higher councils, I really would like just females here today. I just want female goddesses to come and just nourish me, because I'm going through a stage of being nourished at the moment, of being well loved, taken to a garden and being nourished in the feminine and being taught just to let go, be vulnerable and trust and release everything around the mother and around my distrust around the feminine and my very deep wounding in that area. And I didn't realize I still had it. And since I've just let go of it, right now I'm feeling very well loved and I'm feeling total trust in the feminine, a feeling I never thought I could have. So it's been beautiful. So then after meeting the mentor, the hero now crosses the threshold. So depending on what you like, you either go willingly or you're going to get a push and a shove, where you'll be pushed over the edge and start your quest. It may be leaving home for the first time, taking a big step in your work, stepping into a business that you know you've been called to but are terrified of doing. In my case, what I'm doing right now is being pushed into a threshold as a spiritual teacher to run a major work and take this work worldwide, and even set up our own physical center in Perth and do all that, which has scared me. I've been getting pushed over a threshold to get back into music. I was told months ago to get back into piano and start writing my own music and writing ascension templates and blueprints to help people move into oversoul and into their higher frequencies. And I kept resisting it through fear. And then I had my injury, and my injury stopped me in my track from running away from things, literally. And that was my blessing to help me actually settle myself and now start doing that. And I've actually found someone who's working with me to do it now. So crossing that threshold. So this is now your commitment to that next stage. Now you've done it, the next thing you get is even more difficult challenges to test you. You get obstacles. And by the way, as Steve Plummer said, many movies are made after this. Whether it be physical hurdles or people bent on thwarting your progress, or archons turning up and attacking you all the time, or spirits just hitting after you all the time, an ex-partner making your life absolutely miserable, a regulatory board coming after you, a health issue that just won't go away, a financial challenge that just keeps hitting you, that no matter what you do, you keep hitting a brick wall. The hero must overcome each challenge presented with the journey towards the goal. In this journey here, you quickly learn who you can trust and who you can't. You're going to make allies. You're going to discover your enemies. Or as Grace says, being dunked in the ocean constantly. You'll each have their own ways, and even your enemies will teach you and prepare you for the ordeals to come. And I found that. Looking back, even those who were both my allies and my enemies were great help to me. Even there was a couple of guys in my life who were determined to ruin me, and I'm very grateful to them because they helped strengthen me a lot more. Enemies I found the most helpful because they fast-tracked me. Enemies generally openly don't have your good at hand, and they'll come after you, and you very quickly have to wake up and find your power. And my big weakness was I tended to always give up my power. I grew up in a household where I wasn't allowed to show my power, and I was punished severely for doing it. So I fortunately attracted a whole lot of enemies to come into my life to absolutely kick my ass and make my life miserable over and over again, and take away my power, have my church ruined by a guy I trusted who walked in there and split the church almost in half, had a business fall apart from someone who didn't keep their word to me, have someone I trusted as a friend cheat on me behind my back, have a partner cheat upon me, have an ex turn really horrible on me, girlfriend I had at one stage. So fortunately, thanks to all these people, they got me strengthened and helped me and prepared me for greater ordeals like what we're facing now. So yes, Miko, your ex, definitely you'll see in your own journeys, you'll look back, a very important part of your journey, and basically someone who is necessary for your training and someone you'll be very thankful for, and probably want to send them a bottle of wine as you go into your next stage, and to thank them for their wonderful part in helping you. So this is a stage where his skills and all powers are tested, and every obstacle that he faces helps us gain a deeper insight into his character and identify even more. So then you approach the innermost cave. So this is where you either go into an actual location which lies a terrible danger, or an inner conflict which up until now you've not been ready to face. It could be anything like leaving a relationship you've been in for years but you know does not serve you anymore. It could be stepping in when you're in a relationship but feel the need to have multiple partners. It could mean stepping into a business that you're terrified to step into but you know you've been getting called to. It could be taking a leap of faith to go out into the mission field and teach with no security and just see what happens to you. It could just be taking a step and opening your heart with someone who everything in you screams you want to run away and go back to safety. It could mean taking a step of faith to trust someone who says they're going to help you with something, and know that you're making yourself vulnerable where you could get your heart broken again in a business thing or whatever else. So at this threshold, the hero will face the doubts and fears. They may need time. They may just wait for the treacherous road ahead to find the courage to continue. So this is a time of brief respite, so to speak. So the best way of putting this is a time of brief respite, a time when you actually get to reflect, to ponder, to consider, and yep, hang on a sec. Okay, just fix up something on the slide. Okay, so it's really a time of brief respite. Then we hit this dark night of the soul, which is why I wanted to put it, or what's called a supreme ordeal. This is a almost existential crisis that you now face, where you got to face your deepest fear. It could be your deepest fear of abandonment, where all your life you've been terrified of abandonment by the masculine or by the feminine. That fear of losing your freedom, that fear of being locked in a cage, that deep, deep, deep fear of letting go. In my case, I've been facing a deep fear of just letting go and being and just meditating and doing nothing, because everything in me is screaming, you're lazy, you fucking lazy guy. You know, what do you mean you're a spiritual teacher? I was taught, be an accountant, be a lawyer, be a financial guy. That counts in the world. That's an identity. For me, letting go of that identity to be a spiritual teacher and healer, although it's everything my heart desired, I went through everything. I was screaming. Just meditating and letting go, deepest fear is that I will dissolve into nothingness and I would no longer exist. So meditating has always been a fear for me going too deep. Bit by bit, I'm learning to let go even more and go deeper and deeper and deeper. So you face your deepest fear. It could be just to love again. It could be to step into business. It could just be, like I said, to walk away from a marriage or relationship not serving you. It could just be facing the deepest, darkest moment, because only through death can the hero be reborn, experiencing a metaphorical resurrection that grants the greater power or insight to actually necessary to fulfill the destiny or journey. So this is the high point of the hero story, and where everything is dear, put in alive, and failure literally is death or life as you know it. Will never be the same again. So this is an all or nothing. In some tribes, they actually, in some tribes, primitive tribes, when you hit 14 as a boy, you have to go into a pit and kill a lion, which means as a parent, either your child's going to come out as a man, or you're going to find out your child no longer exists. That's how important this actually is. And I don't know how many of you would feel about your son going in to fight a lion and whether you'd be stressing a bit, but this is what some tribes actually do. The ninth one is the reward. So after defeating the enemy, surviving death and overcoming it, the hero is transformed into a new state, emerges a stronger person, and often comes with a prize. So it can be a secret, a greater power, as in my case, greater power and authority in the work which I'm doing, reconciliation with someone, finding a soul connection with someone that you've yearned for all your life, a financial abundance that you've looked for all your life. Whatever the treasure though, whatever you get, You must put celebrations aside and prepare for the final leg of your journey home. The 10th one is now you're returning home with your reward like Jacob and Esau, and now there's a anticipation of danger is replaced with a claim and vindication, absolution, or exoneration and joy. But you still need one more push back into the ordinary world. So here, this is the moment when you choose between your own personal dream and a higher cause. In other words, fulfilling your own dreams or a higher humanitarian purpose to serve the world, where you say, God, not my will, but yours. And although I know I could choose to live this life and enjoy life and have lots of fun, lots of money, I'm going to use my money and use my life for good and to serve. And then there's resurrection. So this is this moment where the hero will have his final and most dangerous encounter with death. So this is where the final battle represents something far greater than the only existence of the outcome of being far-reaching consequences to the ordinary world. If he fails, others will suffer. And this not only places more weight on his shoulders when the movie grips the audience so they too will feel part of the conflict and share the hero's hopes, fears, and trepidation. Ultimately, the hero will succeed, destroy his enemy, and emerge from battle cleansed and reborn. There's something in us that loves this. I know that in the Divergent book series with Trish Pryor, I don't know if any of you have seen the Divergent and Allegiant with Shailene Woodley, but in the actual movie, what they've done is they followed the hero's journey. But in the actual original book, the hero actually died before the end. And I remember the sense of, I was so annoyed. I'd been loving the book. I didn't even quite get to the end. I actually got the book, threw it away. I went and took all my books and threw them in the bin. And now knowing this, I know why. I was so annoyed when the hero died unexpectedly and everything ended really down and there were all the press but saying, but we will go and we will live our life regardless. I'm like, fuck that. I just threw it all away. The hero's journey, you want the hero to live. Anyone else ever done that, by the way? Like you've been so upset or annoyed when a character dies, you just throw the movie away or book away and you refuse to read it anymore. Anyone ever done that? Yeah, great. Yeah. And then the 12th one is the return with the elixir. This is the final return, that really great moment when it's done and you return home. If you ever want to read a good book on the hero's journey, Hind's Feet in the Hind Places by Hannah Hurnard. And I know Grace has read it and Sammy's read it. It's an absolutely magnificent one. If you want to know what elixir is, an elixir means a substance held capable of changing base metals into gold. It's like a magic manifestation gift. It's the ability to be a sage, intuitive healer, intuitive master, like a miracle worker. So Sam asks, can you put the book name in chat? I can do that for you, Sam. Hind's Feet. Yeah, a great book. So to return, the hero has grown as a person, learnt many things, faced terrible dangers, even death, but now looks forward to new life. His return may bring fresh hope to all left behind, a direct solution to their problems, even a new perspective. It's like by me going on my hero's journey now and doing what I'm doing, I'm able to bring fresh hope to many. All of you right now, no doubt, from being in City Awakening over the last year, from what Grace and I went through in our own hero's journey now, are able to experience the joys and able to get some help for the current crisis that's going on in the earth. So this is what you become. You become a light. You become an elixir to the world. And the final reward that you get can be many things, from celebration, self-realization, great abundance. But here, the hero's doubters are ostracized, his enemies punished, and his allies rewarded. Ultimately, the hero will return to where he started, but things will never be the same again. And on that note, I'd love you to share. It's been deep today. Just share on the chat your greatest lessons today. Like what you got the most out of today. Grace's message. Yeah, Grace's greatest lesson. I'm totally fucked up. I wouldn't say that. We all are in some way. So, greatest lesson in the text chat, everyone. Patricia can relate to what I've been going through in life. Grace has nowhere to turn or hide. Yep. That's a great lesson for you. Christine, it's a tough journey. These are your lessons or reflections. I don't mind either. You can put both. Christine, Dark Knight, have to keep doing it. I would agree. Steve, the Dark Knight is so. Sam, the revelation of wanting the Dark Night of the soul to ascend, to go through darkness. Yep. Steve, the Dark Night is real, and like you are in distrust of the feminine. Ouch. Steve, you and 99% of the men of right now that I know. It's like we've got a lot to learn with how we treat the feminine, and the feminine have a lot to learn how to treat us. That's what Grace and I have realized this week. So Stan, the revelation, yep, message I've written that. Sheldon, you'll carry around with you the sense of being lost. Yep, absolutely. That's definitely part of that dark night, Sheldon. Yeah, Alex, the same. Yep. Mark, be real. Listen to the still inner voice. Trust the process. One hell of a ride. Enjoy the journey. Absolutely. But yes, this issue of distrusting the feminine, it's a big one. And something that my sense is in this year, it's very important for the men to start dealing with this and the women to start dealing with their wounding around the masculine. Because these wounds are a real block to ascension. And if we spent the whole year, actually just almost 99% of our city awakening just working on that, I reckon it would be, let's just say it would be very productive time. Patricia, put on the armor. Grace, you keep me busy at the moment. Yeah. Patricia, put on the armor, take up the sword and the trowel. Yep, I agree. Steve, I didn't see it clearly till today. Thank you. Yep. Sheldon, Jacob, I will not let you go until you bless me. Yeah, that's a ripper, isn't it, Sheldon? That's what I'm like, that's what you be with the Father. I don't know if anyone here has seen Forrest Gump, but Forrest Gump has this wonderful scene where one of his close friends from when he was in the army basically loses his leg in a landmine. And he's a cripple for 2 years and he's really miserable. And one day he loses his stack. And all night he's screaming at God, swearing at him, saying, fuck you, who do you think you are? Come on, show me how great you really are. And he spent the whole night abusing God, abusing everything about the cosmos, letting rip, swearing, absolutely being horrible. And then after he finished that, it says the next day, all Forrest Gump said, Lieutenant Dan made his peace with God that night. And he found a great purpose. So Lieutenant Dan. Anyone else got anything to share before in fact, Grace, I'm going to hand over to you now. Maybe you can share before we end a bit from the feminine perspective on what you learned from that and what you got out of it, because it seems it was really hitting you. And I'm sure you'll have some great insight from the feminine perspective.
Well, as you've shared, Warren, the last probably I'd say 2 weeks now, I've been doing intense work on myself and going deep into the journeying within, and because getting ready for this year. And so what I found for me is that it was the horrendous thing that I've done towards the masculine over the years. And really, the insight for me, what was shown to me was my heart was so close to the masculine. And because my heart was so closed, then I moved into my ego. And my ego wanted to compete. And by closing the heart to the masculine, it's actually very wounding to them, because the feminine energy is so nourishing, so loving, and so it cherishes the masculine. It gives the masculine the energy and holding space. Also, creating that nurturing and giving them the power to do the work that they must do in this planet. And so by me closing my heart, it stops the flow and constrains the power and allowing the masculine to do that. And because the masculine tends to lean towards the feminine, so when the feminine is so closed, there's nowhere for the masculine to go. There's nowhere to drink in from the reservoir of nurturing, of caring. It's like being in the womb. So we women have the womb to allow the gift of life, and to allow room to move, and just that feeling as well. And also, it really brings stillness to the mind, the power of the feminine, because when you go deep into your heart, your mind goes still, your ego goes still. And so really my journey the last couple of weeks is just been going, what you've shared today. That's why I was just so on the edge, because I've experienced it. Yeah, the only way I could share is that experiencing the whole process, to knowing and reading about it and having the knowledge is totally different. So we have to go through the process and experience the feelings, the darkest in our soul, to have that huge transformation. And so, as Warren shared earlier, that the horror that I've created over the years, that I've wounded the masculine in terms of having my heart closed and squishing the hearts. So I've had the privilege to really go astral, really astral travel, and turning back time and asking the Holy Spirit reveal to me the times that I've wounded the men in my life, from when I was young, from when I can remember, to teenage, to adulthood, to now. All my past boyfriends, all close relationships I had. I've been very busy with Warren, healing with our marriage and what we went through. What I actually closed my heart to Warren, couldn't receive any masculine love. And so having my heart really open, it just gave it that level of transformation and the absolute desolation, loneliness that the masculine goes through when the feminine really constrains and closes up. And so going through the astral traveling and turning time has really created that surge of energy within myself, and having that transformation, and also feeling the masculine being cared for, being nourished, and giving them the strength and the courage, and being brave to really allow acceptance that softness in the masculine is great strength. And obviously for the masculine, that's just like, being a pussy. But there's so much power in that softness and tenderness. And that's where the feminine comes in. And so that's what I've learned the last couple of weeks, is by softening my heart and being tender towards the masculine just flourishes. It gives that power in the masculine to move forward and to just go to the horizons, and will conquer mountains for the feminine. And so that power underneath the masculine is like, I guess it's like the feminine is the nuclear power for the particles, which is the masculine. So the masculine is matter. and giving that power and propelling and that giving that turbocharge in the hearts of the masculine. So in another analogy, I guess, is that, the feminine is the turbocharger for the engine, and the engine is the masculine. And also, allowing him to move and expand as well. So working the yin yang, the positive and the negative, the black and white, dark and light together, combining it together creates that fusion of sacred union, and really having that sacred union and giving and receiving between the masculine and the feminine is a massive nuclear power in itself, in the cosmos, in the parallel universe, in the multi-dimension. And you can go back in time and bring it to the present, and being present with the whole process of pain, suffering, and you go through it together with the feminine and the masculine is just surreal. It's absolute surreal, and it's like healing the whole planet, healing all living things. And the other thing that I've experienced is that realigning your chakras, all your chakras, realigning, as well as your auric field, magnifying, expanding, and your light body just goes lighter and lighter, and all the heaviness that you feel just comes off, and having that feminine to actually bring in that nurturing allows the masculine to go through that, and the masculine just totally accepting and allowing and really dissolving the ego too, because the masculine tends to move more in the ego, and because of the monkey mind, where the feminine naturally goes intuitively, moves intuitively, even though you're not conscious about it, but it's the nature of the feminine to move intuitively and know how to reach out and touch the masculine. And so it's been a wonderful, wonderful journey, just unmasking the layers and layers and layers of closed heart, from me anyway. And there's so many layers there that I haven't even seen before, and just constantly just opening those hidden inward parts so that it really brings the healing to the masculine. And I'm still busy going through the process because I've realized, being in the business, majority of my clients have been men, and working with the masculine energy and just bringing in my toughness and all that, I could see the wounds, because you not only can wound the masculine in the relationship and relating to the opposite sex, but it's also in business, in personal, in friendship. And so having going to go through the friendship basis, I actually asked a really good friend of mine the other day, I asked him, so did you find that my heart was closed? And he said to me, no matter what I did, Grace, I couldn't come in. And because I couldn't come in, I couldn't expand, and I couldn't expand our relating to one another. And so it just made like that bitter pill that I've caused in myself, having that closed feminine energy. So I'm really in the process of just totally opening up. And, when you have that sacred union and when you're in sync with the masculine, it doesn't mean you're having an affair. It doesn't mean you're going into a relationship. All it means is all energy. Energy has to be transformed. All the things that, what you haven't loved, just embrace it. And so I'm having to do that with the feminine, so that I really have this deep, deep love of the masculine because of all the stuff that I've done. So yeah. Yep, that's right, Mikael. Masculine feminine integration. Yeah, absolutely, Mark. Totally agree. The only one that I've heard, because I've had such a self-loathing in myself, I hated myself so much. I just wanted to, kill women. kill myself. I mean, I've tried to kill myself physically a few times, but obviously I've got a purpose in this life. So, so not only physically, but I've done it spiritually in myself. And so releasing that and going through the release and going through the process and absolute help, because I've gone through, now I can really understand why I have so much fear of the ocean. It revealed to me because underneath the ocean there's so much pressure and there's no life, and the deeper you go into the ocean, you feel so isolated, desolated, so lonely and so alone, and nothing can reach you because of the pressure. And as you go through the depths of the ocean, you actually go through you can really relate to the abomination of the desolation, and going through that as a feminine, the massive fall that the feminine actually fell from grace. It's it's amazing, because again, the other thing that's been shown to me too is the feminine is so much light. It's a light, it's a beacon to the masculine. It's for the masculine. It's like the bee going to the flower, and taking the nectar from the flower and transforming it to something delicious and something sweet. And so me as a closed flower, how can the bee come in and take the nectar and transforming into beauty, into sweetness, into deliciousness in the universe? So having to really open that, it's a fucking difficult process. It really is. I've cried, I've writhed, I've rolled in bed, and no wonder metaphorically my house has been a hot house for the last couple of weeks. I've cried so much that I've never cried before, and it comes from the deep soul, right from the soul, not from the from the throat or constriction. It's just right in the soul because of the devastation that I've created in the masculine. So yeah, going through the enlightening of it, and just the wonderment, just the wonderment of integration and coming together in the oneness with the masculine. And it's a beautiful phase, but it's the hardest ride I've ever had to walk through, I thought. and and this is not physical, it's spiritual, it's your essence, the essence that's within. And so being squeezed the hell out of me, I can just feel how the lemons would feel, us squeezing the heck out of it. So I felt like the lemon being absolutely squeezed internally. So, but looking forward to really working through and continuing integrating the feminine and the masculine. So that's going to be the theme really of this year, because having that deeper revelation is just it's just wonderful. So thanks, Warren. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right, Mark. And also having embracing the ugliness and the revulsion and the the unwanted, and the feminine has that power to embrace all the ugliness and the grotesque, and only the feminine can really embrace that in the masculine, because the masculine has so much disempowered. They're so disempowered, and they don't think much of themselves, and where the feminine can just go underneath the masculine and embrace all the ugliness and the unwanted parts of them. And that's where the assistance is much needed in the feminine for the masculine.
Well, I'm looking forward to what lies ahead, Grace.
Oh, me too. I mean, you and I have been going through that process the last 2 weeks, and I even shared to you how much I absolutely wounded you in our marriage, because my inability to open up right from the very beginning, and I knew, you know, you gave me all of you, and I couldn't open up. So it's been a wonderful process the last 2 weeks in integrating that with you.
Yeah, well, what I found interesting is that I didn't know what was happening at first, but all I knew was I was waking up and I felt myself letting go and trusting and opening up to the feminine naturally. And I was feeling so nourished and so loved on all levels. And it was because I could feel myself opening to the feminine energy again. And I was able to receive it from, I could feel it coming from you. I could feel it from the Divine Mother. I was feeling it with Sammy more deeply. I was feeling it I just was feeling it. But most importantly, I was feeling it in myself so deeply. I was just feeling that reconnection with my feminine side that I felt had been kind of shut down. And so I realized that, like, you know, for example, Sammy would often seek to sort of give love to me, and I was receiving it, but not as fully. Whereas I was noticing I was able to receive it more easily and able to give it out more, and then receive it from you and feel more love from you, and just feel more love for the women in my life who are so important. So yeah, it just made me realize that what you're doing with me, Grace, is just, oh my gosh, the men need it. And, you know, if you'd said to me even a month ago, I still had a lot of wounding in the feminine or still had some unresolved stuff, I would have said no. But yeah, it was just a whole deeper layer. And of course, then I was just releasing some stuff I realized myself. And I remember I went through that journey, as I told you a while ago, where I just was led to go back with every woman in my life who I'd hurt in any way and make it right with them, energetically, but where I could physically as well. So
Yeah, because as well as the feminine opens up to that, it heals the feminine too. I mean, I know I've gone through a lot of so much deep healing in myself, because the feminine is so powerful. It's really, really powerful. It's again, it's like a nuclear bomb for the masculine. And so going inward and allowing myself and really accepting and allowing and really accommodating and opening of the heart, it's brought so much healing for me as the feminine, and that in turn opens up to the masculine of where the feminine have wounded them, because the feminine is more powerful than the masculine. And that's not saying that
yes,
it's not emasculating the masculine at all. It's just we have a different function to one another, and where
agree.
the feminine is the expression of love, it's the feeling of love, it's the sensation of love, and it's for the masculine to make it tangible and more make sense, and allowing it to make sense for for all things, and that's where the feminine just comes in and allows all that and really sparks. It's like the feminine is the match and matches the light and the spark in the masculine, and then they can work together and unite together in that sacred union.
Yeah, well, I can see a lot of, Tantra this year is going to become the theme, because the healing the wounded soul and the heart and mind, it's so much about learning about energy and the connection. I just reckon that there's going to be a lot about that this year.
Yeah, because there's so much craving. We all crave for it. We come into a relationship for who knows what. We've been programmed to go into a relationship, have babies and so forth, like you said, like earlier. And we go by the conditioning and the programming and the whole script. And you know what? There is a way to bring that life back in your relating to whoever you're with, or you have a conscious choice. You have more choices. And as far as I can see, that we can have multiple absolute intimate connection, because we are called to worship in spirit and in truth. That's what we're called for. We are transient energy, and in that energy there is no form. And so transforming that into unconditional complete love for one another, it doesn't really mean having that physical contact or falling into a relationship or having affairs, nothing like that at all. It's just pure love for for one another in the heart, and having that intimacy that we've craved for, hungered for, and that it absolutely drives us crazy. And because we're made of that.
Well, this is what I was saying to you before. Like in Tantra, they dispel everything, because when you actually study the foundations of it with Shakti and Shiva, and how the uniting and the merging of the god and the goddess, or the masculine and feminine, the Shakti and Shiva is actually a dance. Like when they merge into sacred union, become one, it's a joyful dance. And Lord Brahma, who's the Indian god of creation, like the Krishna, Brahma is actually, he has his divine feminine partner, or basically soulmate, but then he also has his consort, for example, his tantric consort, which is Gayatri. And Gayatri has like multiple energy cords from her, and she's like the goddess of Vedic Tantra. So they see it all very differently there. They see it as a cosmic union and intimacy of connection. And like, for example, one of the first things I learned in Tantra was that true tantric enlightenment in higher way of thinking is that your connection isn't so much with the person, they're just a physical expression, it's with the experience or energy. So if you can connect deeply with someone, and you're really just connecting with that energy in a various form. And I remember this funny story, but it actually, for me, it's brilliant, because I actually get that and see that myself in my life I am now. I remember years ago in the Gold Coast, I became really good friends with a stripper who, she had 5 boyfriends. And I said, what do you mean you got 5 boyfriends? I was just curious. I said, because she was really cool. We got on really well. She goes, oh, she said, well, she said, the thing is, Warren, she said, look, she goes, I just feel you'll get me, so I'm going to tell you, because she goes, I just don't tell people this. But she goes, I'm going to tell you. She said, look, one guy's just really cool. He's the most grounded guy. We just I like to just spend time. He just likes to cuddle me. We sit down in the grass and just enjoy each other. Then she said, then there's this other guy, and oh, he's just fun. We go out in town. He likes to go partying. He's a good dancer. But man, he drives me nuts sitting around at home. And then there's this other guy, and he's just the best lover. Like, he's so good. And she said, and he's wild in that area. He's a bit of a badass, and you have to be careful. But yeah, he's dangerous, but he's fun. And then there's this other guy, but so stimulating. He's so intelligent. He's like you. He's good to talk to. He's clever. And we just had the best conversations. And I said, do any of them know about each other? And that was, of course, the part where Tantra wasn't quite practical. She goes, well, no, that's the problem. And I said, how do you make it work? She goes, with great difficulty and with great guilt. I said, I love your honesty. But she goes, but no one guy can meet everything I'm looking for. And I said, I actually get you. And I thought, yeah, kind of in a weird way, she wasn't far off the truth.
It's true, though. But when you actually bring it to spirit, it's an amazing experience, because exactly. That's what we're called to do, really, if we're really, truly working in an ascension. And no wonder we go through the dark nights of the soul, because it is dark, especially when you are in relationship and when you are married, and you have that intimate connection with someone else. You go through all sorts of guilt and shame, and that you're unfaithful and become adulterer, and all this stuff comes on you. And so that's where what I'm seeing is that shattering all those perceptions, illusions, because they are illusions. Because as you shared in the scriptures, we are meant to be so intimate. An ecclesia, a body of moving, living being, ecclesia of body of Christ. And to be one body, how intimate is your body? My body is certainly very intimate, but we're talking about energy. And so when we talk about energy, there is no guilt. So even though you have intimate with someone else other than your spouse, it really just means nothing, really. There is no such thing as being unfaithful in that at least it gives you a chance to outwork what's not happening in your relationship with your partner. Because then it reignites the love between you and your partner, and giving that really, soul nurturing that we all crave for.
Well, didn't Jesus say there's no marriage or giving in marriage in heaven?
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a label. It's just, in fact, Osho, who Sahadra and Shazar, she lived with him for a few years in his ashram, and probably one of the great spiritual teachers on this stuff, and he's my favorite in terms of studying this stuff. He just used to say, the moment you label something a marriage or a relationship, you've created a form or structure which you're now bound within, and it's a natural intimacy killer. And he said, he used to recommend to his disciples, he said, the only time you should ever get married or enter what you call a committed relationship is if you're in a society or environment or a group of people who that's in closest to them for social status. And if you're, for example, seen as living in sin, or you're seen as basically some have a lesser status in society because you're not legally married, or you're not basically in a committed relationship and seen as partners, it can work against you. But he said, you're not getting married or entering committed relationship for love. You're doing it for social acceptance and for societal norms and fitting in, which he said, which he actually told his disciples, that's actually important too. You know, at times you do need to find a way to work within the community you're called to serve. So he said, for example, if you're called to serve in a Western church, it may be very important for you to be married to your partner, because otherwise you wouldn't be recognized and you'd be seen as unfaithful. But he said, but to those who know true Tantra, they know that Tantra is all about love and soul connection, which he said that in fact marriage and relationship is the enemy for it unless put in its proper place.
Yeah, well, that's where the feminine and the masculine come into giving each other full permission on what it means for them. And so coming together is, in partnership. If you want to label as partnership, great. If you don't want to, great as well. But, you know, we've got to deal with the 3D, and we've got to deal with matter. And first and foremost, if we can really rebuild our foundation, what it all means, then it brings so much healing. And then all the perceptions of the illusions are shattered from the matrix. It really sets us free. We begin to be free. When we talk about unconditional love, what the hell does that mean, unconditional love? Unconditional love is absolutely liberating the other person, isn't it? And that's where I see that what I've seen the last 2 weeks is the feminine can give that free liberation, liberating the masculine to absolutely express himself in the physical form and conquering mountains.
Yeah, well, behind every great man is a great woman, they say, and it's actually true. Without the great women in my life, I would not be able to do the work I'm doing, and I mean it. I couldn't do it. Wouldn't have a chance.
Yeah, exactly. So me, like, you know, for example, myself, you know, doing the business with you, so allowing myself to give that space in all our business entity and creating that space, and then allowing the masculine to move in and give them room to actually do what's best at what they do in their field. And so my role as the feminine is to hold space for all the masculine to actually nurture them, to give them that strength and the courage and the, you know, all to make it work and make this wheel work. So exciting, really, really exciting. I'm just, it's painful. It's fucking painful, pleasure and pain all at the same time. But hey, I'm seeing it's worth it. All the sweats and the tears, my eyes were so puffed a few times, couldn't breathe, had to physically jump up and down around because I thought I was going to die. Yeah, it's been all worth it.
Yeah, wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's been a good day today, and I think we have some tools to go away with.
Thank you so much for your patience, everyone, and really listening. And I hope that seed will really plant in your heart.
Yeah, I do too. I trust that everyone just goes away and really sees the world from a different perspective after today. And even whatever challenges you're going through or come up in the coming days, you'll just see it all very differently and from a whole new perspective. That's my desire for you today, because you will fast track your ascension if you do. Now, remember, Steve keeps sharing about rule number 6. Yes.
Just have fun.
Just have fun. In fact, one little thing I'll share before we end, Merlin Caruthers, who was a great prison evangelist who years ago I read his book and it changed my life because he one day he read in the scriptures, you know, give thanks in all things and praise, where Paul says in Thessalonians, give thanks in everything and rejoice in Christ Jesus no matter what. So he was challenged by the Holy Spirit and says, why didn't you do that? So he said he started doing it. He said one day he was told he lost his job and he just went home and started giving thanks to God. Thank you for my job being fired. This means a better opportunity has come my way. Hallelujah. I give thanks. And his wife thought he'd gone mad. And he was walking around doing that. And he just said, then a new opportunity opened up that was even better. And he actually told one guy who he was counseling, who lost his wife, walked out in for another man, and the guy was sobbing. And he goes, what's your advice? And he said, rejoice and give thanks to God and celebrate. He goes, what? And he showed him the scripture. He goes, do what I tell you. Just start giving thanks to God, but he's taking your wife and giving him to another man. And he just goes, okay. So he just started doing it and praising God and giving thanks and says, Lord, I don't understand, but thank you. And after about a week, he was giving praise to God. 2 weeks later, his wife rang him sobbing, came in to see him and said, forgive me. She said, she spelled out this whole thing and she made it right with him. So.
Well, that's why we're called mad and insane people, isn't it?
Yeah. Give thanks in all things. Enjoy your suffering.
Enjoy your insanity. embrace fully your madness.
Exactly. Well, thank you, everyone, and have a good week.
See you, everyone.